you are. I think this is the first time we've had you before a credit union. And so we very much appreciate you joining us.
Well, thank you. Very much appreciate it. I would like to get to know some folks here. I don't know if you want to, how we want to do this. It's a big group, but I'd love to get some names.
Can I tell people a little bit of background for you before we get their names? So Beth has been Vermont State Treasurer for 3 years. I'm going to use my notes so I don't forget anything. For the past 3 years. But before that, she was Deputy Treasurer for 7 years. And all told, she has over 30 years of experience in government finance at both state and local levels.
It's actually getting closer to 35, so I'm feeling kind of old. So.
Well, hey, I'm right there with you. So I know I do every morning. Under Beth's leadership, Vermont has the highest general obligation bond rating of any New England state. And she and her staff at the Treasurer's office developed and managed the only statewide financial literacy program for elementary school children in more than 120 schools participate. So that's near and dear to credit union hearts. While serving as state treasurer, Beth holds quite a few national volunteer leadership positions and was named one of the 10 most notable trailblazing women in public finance, according to the Bonfire publication. Beth has served in public office in town and state government in Massachusetts, New York, Connecticut, and is a graduate of the University of New Hampshire. So that's all the secret information I can give.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to tell you a little bit about New Hampshire. My dad went to UVM, and when you're 17 and your dad says, Vermont, 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 you go to New Hampshire. You should have said to me, any place but Vermont, and I probably would have ended up there. So, you know, what can I say? But it's a pleasure to be here. And while I have been around New England, Vermont is my home. This is where I plan on finishing my career many, many years down the road. And this is the best, it's a great state. I look at what happens in Washington, and I get very dismayed, and I see a different process here. We don't always agree on everything, and I know you're going through a legislative agenda, but the good thing about Vermont is we find ways to work together and to make things happen, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the investment group. But I'm going to stop for a minute. I do want to get some names, and if you just tell me a little bit about where you're from, that would be real helpful. Maybe we can just...
Sure, I'm Bernie Isbell, the President and CEO of Vermont Federal Credit Union of Burlington.
Excellent.
Susan Posabat, CEO of Grand Hills Credit Union, Barrett.
Scott Wheeler, Chairman of the Board of Grand Hills Credit Union.
Okay. I live in Barrie.
Kate Payne, I'm on the board of the VSCCU.
I'm Steve Pope, CEO of the VSCCU.
Tom Beck, CIO at VSCCU.
The contingent there.
Jerry Diamond, Chairman of the Board of the VSCCU.
Yes.
Terry Field, I'm Senior Vice President of Finance at VSCCU.
Sean Gammon, CEO, members of Vantage Community Credit Union.
I'm Jeff Morrison, I'm the CEO of the River Valley Credit Union down in Brattleboro.
Karen Seaman, Vice President of River Valley Credit Union.
Thanks for coming up.
Brian Kent, I work for Joe Bergeron Association.
Matt Kropp, Cooperative, Vermont.
John Dwyer with New England Federal Credit Union in Wilson.
Catherine Lackestead, branch manager with North Country Federal Credit Union.
Deborah, and I'm also branch manager with North Country.
Karen Sylvester, also a branch manager with North Country.
Bob Morgan, I'm the CEO of North Country Federal Credit Union.
Hi, Chuck Ferris, SVP of VSCCU. And I'm Richard Bragg. I do some legal work in the association.
And we've talked many times. And everybody skip, this is JP Isabel. This is my administrative executive assistant, and he's been working on some
I don't think
projects.
we're related, are we?
What was your last name?
Isabel.
Are you from Barrie?
Yeah. My dad's died. I have an uncle Bernie, but I don't think you're him.
No.
You're going with, are you my uncle?
Hey, we're French Canadian. You got to ask for French questions.
Well, that's a good lead-in, but first I want to say thank you for everything you do in credit unions and look forward to more partnership with you. I want to tell you a little bit about some of the things we're working on a bill that's going through and some of the things that I hope we can work on together. There's a bill, H395, I believe is the title, and that bill is something we've worked on with VITA to create because I know that a lot of the credit unions have been very active in the energy area and energy efficiency, in particular renewables. And that bill allows VITA to do an energy clean energy or energy loan fund, and they're centralizing some of the various activities around loans, because energy. Because if you know, there's all sorts of things all over the place, and it's really hard to kind of manage that. Vita's been doing the underwriting of CEDF loans for quite some time. They've got some skills in that. They're like me. I'm not going to understand, gigawatts from whatever, but they understand the financial side. And they're going to partner with folks like Efficiency Vermont and Clean Energy Development Fund to do some of that, and has an opportunity for some commercial loans to help in energy, and they've got a series of things. We're going to back that up, and that's one of the things as treasurer that I've been trying to work through, is how can we help with the capital gaps that are out there? What are they? What are the capital gaps? And are they transaction size? When I talk to investment bankers in New York, they say, well, if you get to 30 million on this thing, tell me. In Vermont, it's usually we're a little lower than that, in terms of sizing something. Is it regulatory? Are there issues that we need to work through with the Department of Financial Regulation, or work through with the Treasurer's Office? Are they statutory? And trying to work through those. So we've got a group that's working on that. And one of the things that came out of that was the VITA proposal. And so again, it's about, we're going to put our money behind that. So what we're going to do is put up to $10 million in a line of credit over at VITA that essentially lowers the cost of financing. Because what they do right now is they go out and issue commercial paper. There's a standing cost to that, plus the cost of the financing. We can do it for a little less. That'll lower the cost of the financing and will permit them to go out and do loans. Now, they want to partner. And they want to partner with banks, and they want to partner with credit unions. And that was a question, I think, Joe, you asked me whether that would extend to credit unions, and the answer is yes. And we encourage you to start talking with VITA about that. I'd give out Joe Bradley's number, but I didn't bring it with me, but you folks know it, but that's an opportunity that we have. We're also working on the residential side. And we've been meeting with a variety of groups. I know some of you have partnered with NeighborWorks, for instance, and have done some really great work there. And I'm on the VHFA board, and so I have a strong commitment to affordable housing and a strong commitment to energy efficiency, particularly when I look at multifamily projects and I see that we have to continue to put capital in because we don't have the energy improvements to lower the cost. And if we can do that, we save money on the energy side, and we create more affordable housing. And so what we've been working on with Efficiency Vermont, NeighborWorks, VED, other folks have sat down and tried to come up with some ideas about residential energy financing. And I encourage you to participate. This is a group that meets generally Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock. We supply the coffee. And some legislators have been involved. And we have the VITA, VHFA, the bond bank involved in it. We've got some folks in the gun center involved in it. Chris Delia from the bank has been coming. Again, we encourage you folks to participate in that as well. What we're trying to do there is say, again, what are the capital gaps and how do we address them? We've worked on the energy idea, a couple of municipal finance ideas that are going to be in some legislation. We recently recommended an increase in the amount of money we put in the community loan fund, which is going to be used for child care and assistant jobs at the same time. So we're looking at different things. We're going to continue this process. So it's not something that goes away at the end of the legislative session. In fact, last year the legislature, we had suggested this. It didn't make it through the legislature. It was S-204. It didn't make it through the legislature. We said, we're going to do it anyways. And we started this process. We're going to continue to work through it. Mobile homes is an area that I think that, especially in Vermont, that you take a look at some of the impacts on my green. So this group is getting together to look at that, and we would encourage you to participate in that process. And we're going to continue to come up with legislative suggestions. I say we've got one on municipal finance, the community loan fund, the VITA program, and we're going to be suggesting some residential energy financing ideas over the next couple of weeks to the legislature. So that's something I have a very strong commitment about, and I see a role for all of our financial institutions, and I would encourage you to participate in that process so that we can work that out. Now, I was supposed to take questions, so I'm going to stop talking and take some questions. Ooh.
Okay, so I'll
sure.
I don't know if you would like it.
No, go for it. Go for it.
We had several just said it before you, that we're in here referencing the Bank of North Dakota, the state bank discussions, which is a returning discussion for a number of years now. So from the Treasurer's Office perspective, how do you see that for the issue, the study that's in the bill for legislators now?
And I think that goes back to why we're trying to do some of that local investment capital gap study. I started off calling it a capital gap study, but some people do know what that means, but when you talk to the public about it, they're not, that's not, let's talk about local investment. When I took a look at the state bank legislation last year, I said, okay, you've got a solution, but you don't really know what the question is. You haven't really defined what are you trying to do. What are the unmet capital needs, and how does the state bank, and if you were cloning, for instance, the Bank of North Dakota, how does that meet that? So for me, I always give credit to my 7th grade science teacher, Mr. Horner, and he always said, start with scientific method and define the problem. So what I testified last year and what we were trying to do with S204 was say, let's define the problem first, and then look at the delivery mechanisms to address that problem. And that's part of the reason we started this Capital Gaps Local Investment Group. And again, it's a very eclectic group. We'll talk about certain issues, municipal finance. You might imagine there were more folks in the bond bank involved in that one. As we talked about housing, there are more folks involved in that. VSEC might be more involved as we try to tackle the issue of college loans and trying to help our students. So we're going to continue this process. So from my end, when I look at the word state bank, I say, I don't know quite, I'm not sure we define what we're trying to accomplish, and I wanted to take that step back and look at it from a larger perspective and what can we do. And I'm open to a number of ideas. What I really want to do is find a way to deliver the services at the lowest cost to the taxpayer, the lowest risk to the taxpayer, and to make it work. And we've got the agencies there, we've got a couple of ideas about ways we might work more efficiently together between various, the Vs, VW, HFA, and so on, and try to find ways to do that. So my approach is, I don't want to jump to a conclusion of what something's going to be till I've done the analysis to find the best way to deliver that service. I have concerns. I'm going to be upfront. And I have concerns about capitalization. How do you capitalize something like that? And how does that work? And what are the safeties around collateralization and cash flow? One of the big differences between North Dakota and here is, and I'm going to be estimating here, but when I look at North Dakota's cash flow, they have pretty much about 3/4 of their operating cash for the entire year. I mean, their disbursement needs for the entire year on hand at any point in time. We've got about a month. So that's a difference in terms of how you look at it. And we have cash is, you do banks, you do credit unions. Cash is lumpy. Sometimes you've got a higher balance and at other points you have lower balances. At September 10th, we put out $135 million roughly for Act 68 payments to towns. Our cash is a little lower. Several years back, we had actually borrowed at that point in time. So we need to take a look at our cash flows, what we can support in activities. One of the reasons I suggested the $10 million, up to $10 million for VITA, and something on the energy efficiency side, is I've looked at the cash flow and said, I think we can do that and maintain our commitment to that. What I wouldn't want to do is go out there, promise the world, go out, put out all this financing, and then say, whoops, we've had another recession thanks to some of the national policies that we've had, and now we've got to retract at the time you need it most. So what we want to be able to do is build some sensitivity to, what are the parameters of what we can do. And that's a long answer to your question. But so from my end, I want to understand the capital needs and what we can do as a fiduciary and as a this is not my money, it's the taxpayers' money, and make sure that we do the right things by it.
Beth, have you had any success or any ideas emerge about how to tackle this student debt problem of lending?
We're still working on that one. We have not really sat down and gone through the process. I think that's clearly on the agenda. We've made a list of 7 or 8 things that we wanted to tackle, and that is on the agenda. We've been really concentrating on energy and then energy into affordable housing for the last several weeks. We did some municipal finance ideas. In fact, we presented a proposal on the municipal side just a few days ago to the institutions committees and the appropriation committees to lengthen out the length of bonding that you can do to match up with the useful life of the particular things that they're trying to bond for. Given Irene in particular, that's very important in recovering communities. Granted, lengthening it out clearly creates a little bit more problem in terms of total interest that you're paying on it, but we wanted to give them some more flexibility. Student loans is something that is on our agenda. We haven't done that yet. We want to finish up, as I said, the energy piece and the affordable housing, but and again, would encourage you. If anyone's interested in doing this, contact JP. You want to give him your email?
Sure, I was actually going to maybe email Joe afterwards and kind of give you the details and have you distribute it. I thought that might be exactly next meeting. That's great.
What I find about Vermont, we've got a collective group in there, and we're coming up with ideas that no one person is going, Joe Bradley had an idea about the energy loan fund. And I said, hey, I can back that up with something. We've got another person that said, well, have you thought about this? GBIC participated in coming up with some ideas. This is that collective process that makes Vermont work. And that's what we're trying to accomplish here. So we encourage you to join in, help us with that, and work together. But it's definitely one, and we've had success. The ones that we've done, we've come up with meaningful solutions. And I hate meetings for meeting's sake. I don't want to sit there and just say, now that we've defined the problem, we can say, there's no solution. I want to find a solution. And the people in that room are just as committed to make that happen. And that's what's great.
Does support for cooperative development have a place on the Treasurer's agenda right now?
Yes. Yeah. Could you tell me a little bit about what you're thinking about?
Just in terms of things like the work that Cooperative Fund of New England is doing to support the development of new cooperatives and emerging cooperatives.
Mm-hmm. It definitely is something we can talk about. I'm interested in sustainable environments in Vermont, sustainable economies. I was invited. I was in D.C. for Treasurer's piece, and we were talking to folks about tax-exempt financing for bonds, all the sequestration, all those things that they're interested in. But I was also invited with several other treasurers on sustainable economies and how we can do some things differently. And I came out of that with a wealth of information. You had to stand in the line because of sequestration, that getting into the executive office building over in D.C. a little longer. And it was raining, but it was worth it. And from my perspective, anything we can do, we don't want to limit our processes to, we're only going to look at this. We want to look at a wide spectrum of things that we can do, and definitely. So that's a long-winded answer. My apologies. And fast, I talk fast. I apologize. I'm trying to work on that. I came from a big family, so if you didn't talk fast, you didn't get a chance to say anything. Yes.
Beth, I want to ask a question, and I understand reasons why it may not have come up legislatively prior, but there's one thing that's baffled me for years, and that is that the state and state agencies are authorized to make deposits in banks, but not in credit unions. Mm-hmm. And I guess, and I understand that the threat has always been, sure, if we get that authority, then somebody will raise the tax issue. I'm not concerned. I'm asking you from a treasurer's point of view, would it be something that you could support to expand the basis for state agencies, the state of Vermont, to in effect be qualified as a member for credit union?
Well, I do get an increased role for credit unions, and we need to talk through that. We put out a credit card RFP back in 2007, I believe. I'm going to look at the dates, but I actually helped write legislation that said, let's do a state credit card, and the proceeds from that, an affinity card, essentially. And the proceeds of that can be used for 4 or 5 different uses. It was, as deputy to Jeff Spalding, we put that through. We did an RFP. We didn't get one bid. So to me, I want to sit back and say, with this group, why didn't we get a bid? And what could we have done differently? And maybe some credit union, participation in that process would be very helpful. I'm going to go back to, I may be bad with dates, but I got a pretty good memory about numbers. And there was a bill, S-17, that was passed looked at back in 2004, I believe, when I was deputy to Judge Spalding, and there were 3 pieces to that. The first was a credit union. Changes to our investments policies, because there was some language in there that in statutes that if we did those things, we should be run out of Vermont. So we wanted to change some of the investment statutes to reflect what we thought were prudent decision-making processes there. The second part of it was to allow deposits in credit unions, and the third part was related to a local government investment pool. Part 1 made it through the legislative process. Part 2 and 3 did not make it through the legislative process. So we did work with you several years back to have that discussion. There were arguments made in the legislative process that obviously didn't prevail. I'd like to have the discussion. I'm not going to commit myself to something, but we've clearly talked to you about this in the past. Treasurer Spalding did. I was again a deputy involved in that, and would like to have the conversation again. And again, I think that's something we can have a conversation about, how you fit into that wider network, and that as we look at local investments and what we can do and what are the issues. So I'm not going to say yes, I'm not going to say no, but I am going to say we've explored it with you in the past. And if you look it up, I guarantee you it's Bill S-17. I think it was 2004. I'm better with numbers and dates.
It very much was, and we were, Treasurer Spalding brought it forward. Then Pro Tem Peter Welch set it aside as part of the modernization bill settling of affairs. So it didn't get deeply explored.
We spent a fair amount of time in committee talking about it. I think it ended up with a tie voting committee, if I recall. It's a long time ago, but clearly it was important enough for me to remember it and to want to put it into a discussion. And I want to talk about the affinity cards too. Maybe there's some opportunities there, and maybe that gets you in the door. One of the things I would have, if we're going to look at that credit card process again, is maybe talk to the AG's office about, under current statute, who could be eligible to work with us on that, and maybe that's something that we should talk about. So, he's pointed out that I got a 3 o'clock meeting I'm going to have to go to, so I guess, can I take one more? He's the boss.
Sure, but you're going to try to stop by the reception in the Cedar Creek group too.
I will be there tonight, so yeah. So is it one more question? Okay.
I scared him away, sorry.
You scared him away. Bottom line is that we do want to work together. I would really encourage you to get involved in that group. The VETA proposal is a perfect example of ways that we've, H395, if you know folks that are concerned about that bill, tell them that it's good for Vermont. It lowers the cost of doing business. It recognizes we can do more locally rather than depending on larger investment banks. I'm not going to tell you that we're not going to be involved with those folks. I'm a realist and I deal with Wall Street. But I also see that we have more opportunities to do more local, and to the extent we can do that, we're going to do that anytime we can. So, thank you.